we give everyone a little bit of time, so that should be good. We'll everyone trickle in as they need to, but we'll get started. So you won't take up too much of your time here today. I'm going to share my camera here in just a minute. So I am Dan Putman with Salto. I'm a customer engineer, which means I get to handle the day-to-day work with our customers on the technical side of things, implementation, working through things like Salesforce, CPQ setup, alongside of all of our other adapters and whatnot. So today we're talking about CPQ and how Salto is able to migrate from environment to environment, do some backup and restoration, things like that that are have proven difficult, we found, in the market for a lot of teams to do easily and intuitively. So with that, let's get going. We do have a smaller group today. So if you are interested in asking a question at any point in time, raise your hand. I'm going to try and keep my eyes on the Q&A section. So either raise your hand or type into the Q&A box anything you're interested in. Don't feel shy about interrupting. I much prefer conversation because if you're thinking of a question, most likely everyone else in the call is also thinking of that question. So with that, let's get stuck in here. Let me share my screen and get the right one. Let's get Salto here. Let's talk about Salesforce and how Salto handles not just Salesforce metadata, but also CPQ data. So obviously we're all familiar with Salesforce. The fact that you have kind of two different configuration types in some of these products, especially with CPQ and billing, things like that. You have the metadata kind of gets treated as a first-class configuration, and then you've got these record-based configurations that get treated as data by a lot of products. This is where Salto approaches it a little differently, even though we have to hit two different APIs, and it's on the Salesforce side, it's configured differently. In Salto, we treat them as exactly the same thing. Semantically, we convert everything into a single format. We treat them as essentially the same class citizen, and we can deploy them together, metadata and CPQ configurations in the same deployments. So what that means is if we're looking here at all the objects I've got in my Salesforce fetch, so Salto connects to Salesforce and pulls these configurations in via the APIs. So we're sitting outside of Salesforce. In my normal metadata area, I've got my Apex classes, Apex triggers, flows, custom fields, whatnot. I've got those records. I've got my objects, so the standard objects of account and lead and opportunity, all those you're familiar with. And then just alongside of it, we also have these installed packages. In this case, SPQQ, SPAA, billing, all of those can be pulled in. And we'll also show you the objects. So the standard objects on the SPQQ area, as well as the records, specific, price discount schedules, product actions, and product rules, things like that. So all of these are going to pop one of these open. Let me go ahead and filter down to a DP product action I have. So I'll usually use for my demos. So here's a very simple product action that I like to use. I call it out. We can see it in here in my Salesforce instance as well. Let's go here and make sure, am I looking at the right one? I'm probably looking at the wrong one. So let's go ahead and look at my product rules and product actions. So you can see here, it's very simple, references, a different product, references an action, and that same configuration is pulled into Salto here. So a product action references a product rule and a product. So I can see those dependencies. And this operates exactly the same as any other metadata, these relationships. So I can sort through it. I can do some exploration. Salto is backing this up every time we fetch from the server. So if I need to, restore a product rule, a product, a discount schedule, any of those things, we've got those and can roll back. restored if someone deletes it or something happens. So here you can see, again, I can look at a product and see what is it being referred to, or what is referring to it and what is it referring to. All of those relationships are available within Salto, just as they are for other metadata types, like like an Apex trigger. What is it referencing? Those are standard things we're used to seeing for dependencies. You get the same thing in CPQ. So I'll stop there for just a second and see if there's any questions. But from here, what we can do is we can start to look at deploying these. We can look at restoring these. We can version these into Git. All manner of things start to come about when we treat the data and the metadata as same class citizens per se. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and let's show. Oh, it does. Yep, Mickey, it does. So when we see a CPQ record deleted, we're going to see that as a change, and you got a couple ways you can do that. We can actually. So let me start a comparison here and see what I've actually got. So if I want to compare my two CPQ environments, so I've got a CPQ1, my sandbox CPQ2, which I'm treating as kind of my upper environment. And let me pop in a ticket ID here. This will be nice later for versioning. And what Salto is going to do when I request a comparison in a deployment is it's going to give me all these changes, all these differences. So these are additions, things that are in CPQ1 or in my source, but not in my target. Modifications, something that's in both environments, but has been modified. I've changed an attribute, added something to it, or deletions in this case. So like you were saying, Mickey, this is where it's in my target, but is not in my source. So I could actually promote that deletion, delete it from the target environment, or if I were fetching from somewhere, I would see it in my fetch record here. This shows me what I've pulled, and I can either look at what was actually pulled down. Oh, I deleted something since the last time I fetched, or we have the ability to monitor for those changes. And you can be notified if something got deleted. Per se, you want to be notified whenever a product's deleted. Salto can see that and send you an email or a Slack message in those cases. So Dante, I'm going to answer your question here. So what if a config object has multiple records? Not sure if this is even possible in CPQ. How is that presented in the metadata? So the configurations, so we map, whatever the structure is in Salesforce, we're going to map similar to that. And most of the time, I think what you're talking about is a good example here is product rule and product action and products. Is that you might have I think it's a rule, might have multiple actions on it. So typically we're going to have a base record, and you might have multiple records that are or dependencies or references that are technically separate records in the config, but they're all interrelated. And Salto is going to call out those relationships, like I'll show here in a second, when we're promoting between environments, so you don't miss anything. So Dante and Mickey, both of those make sense? Like, answer your questions? If not, type a clarification in here. Perfect. And yeah, let me show you exactly what that looks like if we want to do a promotion. So let's go to that same product action I was looking at earlier. So here I've got that product action. I'm going to grab it, and you'll notice that if I came about it and grab my action first, Salto is going to detect that I have two required dependencies. This means that these are required in order for this action to function appropriately within the configuration, and they don't exist on my target. So in this case, I need to have Salto bring them and create these records as well on my target. Now, if I were in a case where I had already deployed, say, product 2 earlier, and that was already on my target, that would not show up as a required dependency. It may show up as an additional dependency if I had changed it between the two environments, or it might not show up at all if it's exactly the same. But Salto is going to show you the current state of these two environments and what needs to happen to have a successful deployment and get configurations where you want them in the state you want them. So in this case, I want to move these two. And if I come back to my top level, you'll notice I don't have any other missing dependencies. I have a couple of other dependencies, so additional ones, and I can review these if I want to. These are just related, related types that have been changed. So in this case, I've changed my product rule type, and I have a related product action. I don't need to take either of these changes because they're additional related changes, but Salto elevates it so you can look and make that choice as an admin. Decide, do I want to go for really small deployment? Do I want to bundle everything up and send it all over at once? Is this work in progress? That's all made visible in Salto. So at this point, I'm going to hit preview, and we'll let this run here for a second. This is doing a little validation. You'll probably be familiar in Salesforce that if you want to do a pre-deployment validation, that's available for metadata. It's not available for things like CPQ, but Salto will do that validation for you and do a pre-check to make sure there's no missing dependencies, no configurations that don't make sense, things like that. And if there is anything that needs to be fixed, missing dependencies, invalid data, we're going to let you know before you hit deploy. So in this case, I'm green, kept it pretty simple for the demo. So at this point, I can hit deploy. And keep in mind this ticket ID up here. This is going to come in handy in just a second. Can the preview be exported? Is a question from Mickey. So in the case of, there's a couple ways to do it. We can't necessarily, export too much. What we will do is we can give you a CSV that will just give you this table. So if you want to see what's changing, we can do that. Yeah, a report in the sense of like a CSV that's going to look just like the table. If you want to get a deeper view of what's being changed here, we can actually push these to a PR in Git, and that will give you the exact line by line difference of what's going to be created. I can kind of show you what that'll look like here in a second, but that gets you into like a proper DevOps flow, right? Where you create a deployment, it'll probably go out for a review, and you'll be able to see exactly, here's the file before, here's the file after, and what's going to be updated, and keep a record of it that way and approve or disapprove. So it's not so there's a couple ways to look at it and to break that down and get to the data you want. So in this case, you'll see I don't have a change here, so it's just an addition. But we have both the element view, which is very good for admins and people that don't like to see configuration files. And then we have the Knuckle view, which is our raw config. This is what's the source of truth behind the scenes. And this is what we'll convert back into XML and push to the server when it's when it goes to Salesforce itself. So let me deploy this, and then I will, that's just so if I need to disable any triggers, Salto lets you know to do that prior to deployment. So I'll fire this over, and then we'll have a look at what Salto does automatically to give you a lot of these this tracking for what we're doing, how we version it. And then if you're using a ticketing system like Jira, which I am, you get some really nice integrations there on your actual Jira tickets. So we'll let this go here. And keep in mind that if I were doing a metadata deployment at the same time, let's say I want to push a couple triggers or maybe a couple of custom fields and profile permission set updates, I can do all that at exactly the same time in these same deployments. I don't need to go to two different products or do two different deployments. Salto has the intelligence to know how those things are related and which things can go to which APIs and in which order. So very, very handy. Now, a couple of things I'm going to go ahead and push to Git. And Salto, I like to show this. This is everything that Salto is doing. It's grabbing our config files. It's going to go ahead and give us a nice little message. It's going to version this in a Git provider that you bring to the table. So it's not a Salto Git provider. It's actually something you can use, GitHub, Bitbucket, whatever you prefer. And I'm going to push. This actually can happen automatically. So in demos, I show it happening, but we can just as easily toggle a setting that'll send that automatically over to Git. And now what you have is you have a couple of things. I've got a version on GitHub, and on my Jira ticket here, if I refresh this now, I should have a record of that deployment right on my Jira ticket. So if you're using something like this, some other ticketing system, you'll see that nice message and a link to exactly what is changing. So if I want to go here, I can see exactly what that file was. I can see the full commit. And if I were right here, they're all additions because brand new things I've promoted. But if there were a change, let's say I was changing code inside of a trigger, I'd see exactly what it was before and exactly what it is after, without ever having to be a Git expert, right? So I get that tracking over time. Very, very handy. And exactly the same thing that happens in metadata, you now get in your CPQ data. So far, so good. Oh, we lost a few people, but any questions from the crowd here? No? Okay. So the last thing I always like to show at this point, so I showed you versioning, I showed you moving, is that I mentioned that ability to do restore. So every time we get data back from the server, every time we do a deployment, any of these touch points to Salesforce, we actually are creating restoration points, snapshots on time. So I can grab one of those and ask Salto to compare against that point in time. In this case, I'll go all the way back to the end of May. And Salto will look at what the state of the server was then versus what I have now, and give me the ability to cherry pick certain changes or take it all if I really wanted to. But most of the time, you're probably going to want to do a cherry pick of certain things you want to restore. And I can bring it back, say, like I said, anything, in deleted product, discount schedule, anything that someone might have mucked up unintentionally. So in this case, I don't actually know what I had at that point in time, but we can see that, if I wanted to delete that product rule and product action that I just brought out, I could do that. It's showing me that these didn't exist back then. So if I wanted to restore those and get rid of them, I could. Same thing with that product that I just deployed. And then anything that might have been deleted. So this looks like old stuff that I had back then, but I probably deleted for a good reason. I can bring those things back, as well as modifications. So things that have changed since then, I can bring those back. So this restoration is, again, super handy for CPQ because there's nothing really like this out there when it comes to doing a rollback or understanding what the state of your CPQ data was before. And this is, once you select something and go into the preview state, you're essentially into the same deployment flow as we were previously. So very, very handy for giving you that extra level of protection. So it's a great question, Dante. So all of this is included in the sense that you don't have to pay extra for CPQ support. We price based on the size and complexity of your configuration. So if you have a bunch of triggers and a bunch of CPQ data, you get charged for more than if you have just small instances, just a couple of CPQ things. So it's really based on the size of your configuration set. That said, if you want to say scale down, there's things you don't care about, you want to filter out, you can do that to reduce the noise and reduce what you're protecting and managing within Salto. So we let you do those kinds of exclusions. Of course. Right. So that really is what I wanted to show today. Give you an idea of how we handle it, the nice things we bring to the table. It's especially for CPQ. It gets neglected a little bit sometimes in terms of your tooling. So yeah, I'll pause now, like ask any other questions you may have. If you don't have any questions, if you want to get your hands on it, we do have a free 30-day trial on salto.io. So I'll pop that into the chat here in just a second. But if you go there, you can sign up for that. You can quickly connect to your Salesforce instances using OAuth. Salto will ask you if you want to make it a CPQ environment. I want to fetch your CPQ data. Just click the checkbox and you're off and running. And if you connect 2 of them, you can do just what I did here today and start to move data back and forth. Excellent. Any last questions? Oh, there we go. From Dante. Once we install the CPQ package in Salesforce, does Salto just start fetching CPQ data and metadata? Are there other configs? Nope. So once you install that CPQ package, as long as you've told Salto when you first set up your environment, it'll ask you, do you want to fetch CPQ? Once you click that checkbox, it'll just happen automatically. So Salto will take care of the rest. We can do advanced configuration and pull additional things, pull Salesforce billing, all that. But yeah, CPQ is a checkbox, and then it goes from there. Oh, it's already set up. Great. In that case, you will need to, what I would recommend, the easiest way to do it is to reconnect the environment and check the CPQ sandbox, or check the CPQ checkbox, and that will start to pull. Otherwise, you'll need to go in and edit the configuration if you already have one set up without CPQ, and then it will start pulling, which is something I can always help you with off this call. But otherwise, create a new environment is probably the easiest way to do it. Great. So Mickey, can this work for other Salesforce apps that are using config data? Yes, absolutely. So the common one is billing. That's the one we see most often. But anything that is a record-based config based on a namespace, we can work with you on. It requires a little configuration in the, I could show you what I'm talking about within our configuration file. So this is behind the scenes. We do this automatically for CPQ, and soon we'll do it automatically for billing, where you can just check a checkbox and we'll give you a default config. For additional apps that use record level configs, or record level database configs, you would do something similar to this, where you would put in the namespace, start to fetch those things, and then you'd need to tell us in these data objects what to include, what to exclude, and how to handle broken references, certain things like that. This is where we don't have a standard config for the multitude of apps out there that may use record-based configs. We're more than happy to work with you to get it tuned up just right for you. Mickey, do you mind me asking what other apps are you interested in managing? TrackWise. Okay. I haven't worked with TrackWise myself, but I'm pretty sure it would work. I know there's other ones that aren't record-based that we pulled in, GeoPoint and other things like that. So Salto works really well at being flexible and working with all the other apps that you might be configuring. Yeah, if that's something you're interested in looking into, yes. Oh, this one, Salto doesn't version the config, but it is something where you can easily version it in. Actually, I take that back. I do take that back. I believe we do version it. I'm getting silly. It's not a question I always get. So you're stretching me. You'll notice the Salto config, it's actually right here, is right inside of the the environment folder structure. So we are going to version that config, and we can keep track of that and what it's been over time. Yes, the CPQ checkbox is a newer enhancement. Newer in the sense that if you connected maybe 6 months or 8 months ago. I don't know if the checkbox was there, but it's been there for most of 2024. So when you set up a new environment, we make it easy to start with CPQ. And Mickey, if you are interested in TrackWise setup, we can always touch base off this call, and we can always dig into that with you. Terrific. Any last questions? No? Okay. If anything comes up, if you guys have any more questions, please reach out to us. Let me punch my email in here real quick, just in case you got anything. Oh, Mickey, perfect. You already sent it out to the contact form of sales. Perfect. I'll find you in there. That's the right way to do it. So we'll connect offline. So thank you very much, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. Excellent. Yeah, absolutely, Dante. Hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, hope you're talking to you soon. Thanks, everyone.